Good morning, students. This is Economics Class 11, Chapter number 2, Fundamental Concepts and Terminologies, Part 2 video. I would request each and every student to take out your textbook and wear your earphones and be very attentive in this class. Now, come to the characteristics of wealth. Now, it should possess the characteristics of usefulness. It must be useful in satisfying human wants or needs. Therefore, goods which are useful in satisfying needs of human beings are wealth. So, anything that is satisfying this needs of human beings are said to be wealth. For example, house, vehicle, precious jewelry, etc. So, these are the needs. Okay, a house is a basic need. Vehicle is also a basic need. So, any needs that is being satisfied. So, satisfaction should be there. That is the main purpose. That is the main characteristics of wealth. Second, it should be scarce. Those commodities which are scarce in supply in relation to their demand and possesses exchange value besides being useful are called wealth. Goods which are useful but not scarce and do not have exchange value like sunlight and air are called wealth in economics. So the second characteristic is that it should be scarce, that is shortage should be there. Shortage should be there. So suppose air, sunlight, these are the things that are basically that is needed, but the amount of its availability is not limited. It's unlimitedly available in the nature. So that is why any commodity which is scarce in supply should be related to this wealth, and also it should possess the exchange value. It should have physical or intellectual existence. Wealth should have an existence which can be exchanged. So the existence should be there. That is physically, that it should be a tangible one. The ability to understand the aptitudes of human beings, their physical abilities, etc. are the innate abilities and assets of human beings and are usually not exchanged. So these are the things which are intangible to us. Okay, aptitude of human beings, etc. That are the things that is intangible to us. In today's world, however, the intellectual abilities of human beings like ability to create new ideas are exchanged for money in the market, and hence the intellectual ability to create novel ideas and goods is called wealth. Now say, look, as I said earlier, the physical abilities, that is the aptitudes of human beings, these are the things which are intangible. But if you are using this abilities to provide any services, then you can create wealth from it. Clear with this? Yet the ability of a scientist to think is her quality and not wealth. But the novel idea created by the scientist is wealth. So a scientist who is able to think highly, that is his ability, which cannot be measured, that is something which is an intangible one, that is her quality given to you. But any kind of novels she writes or any research she does, so that research could become one of the wealth to her. Clear with this? So again I would repeat, it should have physical or intellectual existence, means any abilities or aptitudes you can say of human beings or physical abilities from which we can create the wealth. So these are the characteristics given to you. Now, wealth constitutes goods which are capable of exchange. Wealth is an economic concept and therefore must be capable of getting exchanged. Wealth is meant to satisfy present as well as future consumption and other needs and therefore must be capable of exchange. A house purchased today satisfies the present need of housing and can be sold in future to buy other goods. Precious metals, land, etc. are also possessing these characteristics. So, what it is saying, the other characteristics means wealth constitutes goods which are capable of exchange. Means you can exchange. If I want to exchange something, any product or any commodity, whatever, any services, you can say it should be capable enough to be exchanged. If I am exchanging you the education, I am having the knowledge, so I am exchanging my knowledge to you, so I can create wealth from it. So that is why it is written wealth is an economic concept, and therefore it is capable of getting exchanged. It should be capable enough. So what I am doing right now, I am capable enough to exchange my knowledge with you. So wealth is meant to satisfy present as well as the future consumption and other needs. Therefore must be capable of exchange. So wealth is something that is capable enough to satisfy our consumption and other needs. Okay. So therefore, it is said it should be capable enough to be exchanged. A house purchased today satisfies the present need of housing and can be sold in future to buy other goods. Then the other materials, that is metals, land, etc. also are possessing these characteristics. Now the second is durability. Wealth must possess durability. Durable goods can be used for future exchange and for satisfying future needs and therefore become wealth. Goods which perish after single use cannot be used for future transactions and are therefore not wealth. For example, land, house, precious jewelry are durable goods and hence can be considered wealth along with their other characteristics. Shares are also said to be the wealth. So, what it is saying again, the durability should be there. The wealth should be possessing this durability characteristics. So, it could be stored in future exchanges, for the future exchanges and for satisfying the future needs. Therefore, it can become the wealth. Now, goods which perish after single use cannot be used for the future transactions and are therefore not wealth. So, anything which cannot be saved in future or cannot be kept in existence in future, therefore, that is not said to be a wealth. So, the examples given to you. Now, food grains which are produced by a farmer are not wealth if they perish in a very short time. So, for farmer, these food grains are not his exact wealth because there is no durability. Likewise, labor of a laborer is also not called wealth. However, if food grains can be stored in cold storage for a long time and their market value increases in future, then those become wealth. Hence, new technology can redefine wealth. But this was a limitation in the ancient times, right? But if this food grains, what the farmer is producing, is stored in the cold storage for a longer time, if it is durable, then it can be said that it is a wealth to this farmer. That is, his food grains, what he is producing, can become his wealth for this farmer. Now the types of wealth. Wealth can be classified on the basis of two, that is individual wealth and societal wealth. Second, national wealth and international wealth. Individual wealth and social wealth. Wealth under the ownership of an individual and meant for private consumption is called individual wealth. For example, a house. Wealth under the ownership of society and meant for collective consumption is called societal wealth. For example, dam. So, any wealth that is for the personal use of a personal for a particular individual, then it is said to be an individual wealth. Say for an example, a house for a particular person, or you can say any wealth that is personally used by any state or a country, then it is said to be a social wealth. So, individual wealth and social wealth. These are the two things that has been given to you. Again, wealth under the ownership of society and meant for collective consumption. Okay, many people can consume it. Say for an example, bridges, roads, these are the social wealth. A house, a car, that are the examples of individual wealth. Second, national wealth and international wealth. Wealth belonging to a nation and possessed and treasured by a nation is called national wealth. It helps to generate exchange value directly or indirectly for a nation. For example, rivers, mountains, literature and scriptures, etc. International wealth is that wealth which is not owned by one nation but belongs to the whole world and can be shared by several nations. So, any wealth that is being adopted or maintained by a particular nation, then it is said to be a national wealth, and many countries are using, then that is said to be an international wealth. What is welfare? Welfare means enhancement of life situations, standard of living, and overall state of improvement. The concept of welfare is used by all philosophies from spiritual sciences to economics. All human activities, economic and non-economic, are ultimately done with the purpose of improvement of life. Welfare can be measured quantitatively in the context of growth and qualitatively in the context of development. In economics, subject of welfare can be studied as individual welfare and collective welfare. When an individual seeks to make efforts to improve his or her standards of living and well-being, it becomes a subject of individual welfare. Okay, so when an individual seeks to make efforts to improve his or her standard, living standard is being improved and the efforts has been taken by this individual, then it becomes an individual welfare. Say for an example, if he purchases a house, a car, any luxury items, then it is said that his individual welfare has been increased. So that is respect to his individual welfare. When nations and governments seek to improve growth, development, etc., it becomes a subject matter of collective welfare. So anything that is related to the nation or the government to which is regarding to improve the growth, development, etc., it becomes a subject matter of collective welfare. Now, the relationship between wealth and welfare. Generally, when wealth increases, welfare also increases. As more wealth means higher capacity to generate monetary value, greater power to exchange goods, or purchasing power for the owner and hence greater well-being. This is largely true in case of individuals. So this is related to the welfare, means the capacity to generate the monetary value, greater power to exchange the goods, and purchasing power for the owner. But when the wealth of a nation increases in the form of national income, the welfare of people will increase only if this national income is equitably distributed among all sections of the society and among all sectors. Besides, a nation's welfare also depends upon social and cultural formation, and hence there is not always a direct relation between wealth and welfare in a society. Now, what are the factors of production? The activity of conversion of raw materials and resources to final goods which satisfy human wants is called production. Again, the conversion of the raw materials and the resources into final goods, and with these final goods are able to satisfy the human wants, then it is said to be production. By converting the nature of resources, their utility increases. Hence, production can also be called the process which increases utility of resources. For example, an example is given: when wood is converted into chairs which are demanded by customers for satisfaction of their wants, then the utility of wood increases, and this process of conversion is called production. So, by alone the wood cannot be used for us. But a chair is made from this wood, then it is demanded by the customers. They would purchase it. Okay, so the demand is increased and the utility also increased. So in this way, the process of conversion, this process is said to be the production. Now the agents which help in such a process of conversion or production are called factors of production. Now there are four factors of production, namely land, labor, capital and entrepreneur. All these factors are equally important in the process of production. In a system of just distribution of income, the total income generated from various activities is distributed to each factor of production as per their productivity or their contribution in generating that income. According to Alfred Marshall, there are two basic categories of factors of production. First one is nature and second one is human beings. Land. In a general understanding, land may mean the surface of earth livable for mankind. However, in economics, the concept of land is more inclusive. According to Marshall, all natural assets which help in production of economic activities constitute land. That is, climate of a particular part of earth, water resources, fertility, mineral resources, all these constitute land. So land is one of the factors of production, which means the surface of the earth where the livable for mankind. Now in the concept of economics, land is more inclusive because uh, all the natural assets which are helpful in the production or the economic activities constitute land. That is, what are the things that is included? Climate of a particular earth, part of the earth, water, resources, fertility, mineral resources, all these constitute land. Hence, land can be said to have the following characteristics. Now, what are the characteristics? Land is a gift of nature and is not man-made. So, it is a natural thing. The total supply of land is fixed. So, no one can increase the supply of land. Whatever it is naturally given, it is that much only. Land is a geographically immobile and all types of land are different in fertility, climate, conditions and so on. So there are variety, that is various types in fertility. Then there are different climate conditions existing and so on. The remuneration of land as a factor of production is called rent. Okay, so the remuneration what we pay for the land is said to be as rent. Now, second is labor. Physical or intellectual work by humans in order to earn returns, which is done under the supervision by some authority, is called labor. So, any work what we do is said to be physically or intellectual work done by any human being is said to be labor. The characteristics of labor are, first one is labor cannot be separated from the laborer. So the labor from the laborer, there is always a laborer for the labor. So no one can separate labor from the laborer. Second one is labor cannot be stored. In a way, labor of effort done by a laborer is perishable. So it is perishable. It cannot be stored. The mobility of labor is influenced by social and economic reasons. So it is influenced by social and economic reasons. The efficiency of every laborer is different. So the efficiency of each and every laborer, because every individual has the different capacity. So which means the capacity of every laborer to perform the labor is different. The supply of labor depends upon the population. So if a country is having more population, that is overpopulated, then the supply of labor is more. And if the population is less, the supply of labor, because this labor means a particular human being. The remuneration for the labor is called wages. This we are knowing. Now the next is capital. So in modern times, capital is considered to be highly important factor of production. All man-made goods which help in production constitute capital. It is different from land and labor as it is called as it is a produced factor of production. In other words, it is a man-made factor of production. For example, a tractor is produced factor of production which further helps in the production of agricultural goods. So capital means any investment, you can say, what the producer is keeping. That is, say for an example, a tractor to a farmer. So a tractor is one of the capital which is used in the production of this agricultural goods. So it is said to be a capital. There is a difference between capital and wealth. Though several times some goods are factors of production as well as wealth, it is not so always. A good may be a capital good as it helps in production, but it may not possess all the characteristics of wealth. Or another good may be wealth but not a factor of production. So the characteristics of capital can be stated as, what is the characteristics? First one is it's a man-made factor of production. So it is the man-made, that is artificial, it is not natural. Second, it is the most mobile of all factors of production. Third, the increasing demand for capital in present times, owing to increased capital intensive methods of production, has resulted in increasing scarcity of this factor. And the fourth one is the remuneration of capital is called interest. Now, the next is entrepreneur. So, entrepreneur is the factor which brings together, that is coordinates all other factors of production for the production process for an economic activity. There is a difference between management and coordination. Management of work is done by a manager who is a salaried laborer of the entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is the person who sets up the enterprise. So any person that is managing, or you can say who is the owner of the firm or a company, is said to be an entrepreneur. Now he manages all the other factors of the production. Now the management of the work done by a manager who is salaried laborer of that entrepreneur. So under the observation of this entrepreneur, the management, that is the manager, manages the work. Entrepreneur is the risk taker who takes the risk of setting up an activity. So he is the person who takes the risk. This factor does not get fixed return but tries to generate income by running the economic activity successfully. She may incur a loss if the activity does not function well. So he is the ultimate risk taker who whereby enjoys the profits and mourns over the loss. Okay, so if he gets more profit, that is, he would generate his income, and if he incurs any loss, then he has to bear the loss. The characteristics of enterprise can be stated as, the first one is this factor is the decision maker of the activity. So he is related to the decision maker. So any important decision is taken by him. Second, this factor is known as the risk-taking factor. So this is the risk-taking whereby the risk is high. It possesses the quality of coordination. In other words, entrepreneurship is a quality. So it is a matter of coordination. If you coordinate all the factors, then you can enjoy the benefits. The remuneration for this factor is called profit. So the remuneration is said to be profit. Now the trade cycle. Economic activities go through phases of dynamic changes like a human life goes through changes. Such changes are basically of four types. So just like a human being, there are trade cycles also in the economy. First one is irregular changes, seasonal changes, long run regular trend, long run dynamic changes, which are cyclical in nature. First one is irregular changes. These are accidental changes which occur in an economic activity. Example, floods, famine, storms, fire, and so on. Such accidents impact on an economic activity in the short run and sometimes in the long run. So these are the accidental changes which occur in the economy. And the examples that has been given to you, floods, famine, storms, fire. So these are the accidents that in the short run and sometimes are in the long run. So these are the irregular because it is not regular enough. Okay, floods, they may or may not happen. Famines may or not happen. So like this, it is irregular changes. Second one is seasonal changes, which is quite according to the changes occurring according to the seasons. These changes regularly occur in economic activities with changing the seasons. For instance, demand for certain goods changes by seasons, and accordingly production and employment may change. So if it is a rainy season, there is a production of umbrellas, gumboots, raincoats, and the demand is high. If it is winter, the woolen clothes, and the summer, it is cotton clothes. So the demand changes as per the seasons. Third one is long run regular changes. Some changes occur in a given direction in the form of a trend. These are directional changes which occur in an activity. For example, some regular sales trends. So there is long run regular changes. Maybe there might be high demand in the long run. Say for an example, chocolates. So chocolates are having the high demands. So anything that is having a long run regular changes, it may decrease or it may not. Okay, so you can take any commodity. So like this, cyclical changes, dynamic functions arising in an economy over its long run, growth leading to rise in growth of economic activities and fall are called trade cycles. The rise and fall in economic activity is called cyclical in nature. So any dynamic fluctuations that is occurring in the economy over its long run growth, which is leading to the upward swing in the growth of economic activities and also the fall. That is, there is rise and fall are called trade cycles. Now, the rise and fall in the economic activities is the cyclical in nature. That is up and down graph. Some changes Such changes occur in economic activities and growth process of economics also goes through these changes, and the study of these dynamic changes are called trade cycles is very important in the economics. Now the definition of trade cycle, according to Herbler, trade cycle is an interval that embraces alternating periods of prosperity, that is the good time, and depression, that is the bad time. According to Hawtrey, trade cycles are continuous phases of good and bad changes occurring in the economy. So any good or bad changes that is occurring is said to be the trade cycle. Characteristics of trade cycle are they depict dynamic changes in the economy. That is, the dynamic changes is being depicted. They depict the positive and the negative changes in the economy. Positive and negative changes are also recorded, and these arise because of several factors. So other factors are affecting this trade cycle. Trade cycles have various phases, and each phase does not last for a uniform period. So every phase are phasing, but the time period is not that uniform, that is not regular. Okay, no one can predict it. So these are the characteristics. Now the phases of trade cycle. A trade cycle has the following four phases. First one is boom and inflation, that is one and the same. Second one is recession. Third is depression, and fourth is recovery. Boom. This is a period when economic activity reaches the maximum growth level in a given time period. Demands have peaked and so have incomes and profits. Thus, this period is called peak. Now, the period that is in the economy when there is maximum growth level and everyone are having more incomes and more profits. So, because of the high incomes and high profits, the demands also increases. So, that is why there is um, boom. That is why this situation is said to be as boom, or you can say peak period. Second one is recession. This period follows the period of boom. When economic activity peaks in a given period and investments and employment have reached the highest possible levels, a slowdown occurs. Demand slows down, investment and employment follow. So after this boom period, what is the other thing that happens in the economy is this recession. Okay, so investments and employment have reached the highest possible level when in the peak, and after that there is a slowdown occurring, that is said to be reset, that is slowing down the demand, the investment and the employment. So this is the period of recession. Third one is depression. The slowdown in the recession phase continues to cause a depression when all activities reach a minimum level. Under those circumstances, the confidence of buyers, producers, and investors in the economic activity is at its lowest. In the phase of recession, consumers start expecting further fall in prices and reduce demand in expectation of further price fall. With the fall in demand, production falls and employment falls, causing further reduction in the demand. Thus, a depression is caused. So, this is the situation in which every demand and supply reduces, and it is the lowest where everything is in the lowest phase. So, all are in depressed manner, that is due to the price fall and the demand, and there is no expectation. So, this is one of the situation which is said to be as depression, which is, you can say, reached the minimum level. Now, the fourth one is recovery. When depression lasts for some time, the suppressed demand starts emerging. Governments may try to boost investments and employment, and certain times technological changes happen in the long run. This leads to a recovery of demand, employment, and investment. So, after the depression stage, there comes the recovery stage wherein there is the suppressed demand emerging into the economy, and thereby the government tries to boost up the investment and the employment opportunities, and there are certain times the technological changes may also happen. Say for an example, in the earlier times in the banks there were people using the record were using used to write the records by manually. Okay, manually it was done. The records, the journals were kept written manually. But now after that, the invention of computer, there was a technological changes that has been occurred. So the government has increased, that is made the investments in this technology, and now each and everyone in the even in the schools, that children are taught to use these computers. So now it is like a recovery, that at that time it was a recovery stage wherein all the people have learned to use the computers and the laptops. So clear with this? Because of the new technological changes, the this recovery stage were there a few years ago. Now, these types of cycles occur in all economies and all economic activities in the long run. However, in market-oriented economies, these occur more openly, while they may be suppressed by the state in the state-controlled economies. So, students, I hope today's lecture was clear to you. I would request each and every student to read the text once again and go through it thoroughly and clear your concepts. Anyone having any doubts, please clarify it in your WhatsApp group. Thank you for today's session.